Tonight in Q Weekly, we preview Paul's journey to becoming Julia in an engrossing story screening this week at the Melbourne International Film Festival. We get to grips with the science of numerology with special guest Michael McAlpine. But first, over to Michael King with a Q News report.
Welcome to Q Weekly News here on Bent TV Channel 31. This week joining us on Q Weekly News is Michael Kelly from the Rainbow Sash Network. Movement, I beg your pardon.
That's fine.
Before we actually go to discuss a document released by the Vatican this week, tell us a little bit about what the Sash movement's all about.
Just very briefly, we're a movement of gay and lesbian Catholics with our families and friends. And I guess for about the past 6 or 7 years we've been publicly challenging the Church in its treatment of gay people. And we're best known for attending Mass wearing a rainbow sash to challenge the Church's exclusion of gay people. And we usually get refused communion, but that also then allows us to make our very strong calls publicly for the Church to change in its treatment of gay people.
But this week we're going to actually talk about a document released by the Vatican, and in a rather warm title, Considerations Regarding Proposals to Give Legislative Recognition to Unions Between Homosexual Persons. Now, you've put out a few press releases on this matter this week. Basically, what is the opinion of the Sash movement on this document?
Well, this document is probably the strongest and most significant document the Vatican's put out on any issues to do with gay people for 15 years. It's, from start to finish, it is an unrelenting attack on any attempt by any legislature anywhere in the world to give any rights at all to gay couples. The document demands that all Catholics and all politicians work to repeal any laws that already exist and to support gay couples, not just gay marriages. You know, we're talking about domestic partnerships, all kinds of fundamental rights for gay couples, and that all politicians work against any new legislation wherever it appears. So I think the danger is that politicians around the world who otherwise would have been quite supportive or quietly neutral about such legislation are now going to feel that one of the most important spiritual and moral and most powerful institutions in the world has spoken, and they're going to have to oppose this legislation. In places like Latin America, parts of Asia like the Philippines, parts of Eastern Europe and Africa, where the Church is enormously strong and gay rights are enormously weak, this document is going to make it very, very hard for gay rights activists, for judges, for politicians to give any rights to gay people at all. And that includes places like Nicaragua, where gay people are still more or less almost criminals. It's going to make it very hard to wind back even that because the document's so negative. Right, well, of course, both in Tasmania and in the federal government in terms of gay couples' rights, there's still quite a long way to go. In Tasmania there's some good stuff happening, but in a few weeks' time there is this suggestion of a public registry for gay couples. Now, officially this document demands that all Catholic politicians vote against anything like that and oppose it publicly, speak out against it, and demands that bishops and ordinary Catholics lobby their politicians to make sure they vote that way. Now, lots of right-wing Catholic groups are going to jump on the bandwagon very, very vigorously, very aggressive. They already will have in the last day, to lobby their politicians across the board, not just Catholic politicians, but imagine John Howard, for example, being lobbied by right-wing Catholic groups, saying you've got to make sure there's no progress on rights in federal government for gay couples. He will listen to that.
I was going to ask you about the parenting aspect of the document.
Yeah, part of the document is to say that gay couples should not be allowed to have adoption. And the logic of the actual paragraph is that they also shouldn't be allowed to foster children or have their own children, I mean, by artificial insemination, for example. What it says is to place a child in a gay couple's home is to do, quote, violence to the child.
And the document actually says, as experience shows. Is there any evidence of this experience in the document?
Look, it's interesting in the document, that paragraph begins with as experience shows. There's not a footnote. You know, the document has 5, 6, 7, maybe 14 footnotes, mainly to other church documents, which is typical, the Vatican quoting itself. But at the start of this one, it says, as experience shows, and there's no reference, there's no evidence, there's no footnote. Now, I've talked to quite a lot of youth workers and academics, and they all say that the evidence, in fact, of studies that do exist, shows the opposite, that kids brought up by gay couples tend to be as happy and well-adjusted as any other kids.
Probably more accepting.
And probably more accepting, more tolerant, yes. So the Vatican is on very shaky grounds. It also quotes numerous experts, which again are unnamed. This is just not acceptable intellectually, academically, theologically, politically. You can't make these wild inflammatory statements about people across the board, you know, gay couples in general, and then refuse to back up what you say with credible evidence.
What would you suggest that members of our community do about the document, besides contacting the Sash movement, which I'll ask you for your details in just a moment, but what is there that the general person within our community can do?
Gay people, I think, should be getting on the phones and getting on the email system straight away and writing to the local politicians, federal and state, completely rejecting this outrageous attempt to interfere in the processes of a democratic country. I do think that the gay rights lobby, that queer students, that gay people in general should actually be protesting outside St Patrick's Cathedral. It's not our style. We go to Mass and protest in a different way. But I think the gay community should be up in arms against what the Catholic Church is trying to do. So some very strong public protests and very public and private lobbying of politicians. So they know that, yeah, there'll be some right-wing Catholic groups out there who'll take this up and lobby them. Some of the Catholic bishops, the more extreme ones like George Pell, will lobby them. But hey, there's a huge number of gay citizens with all their families and all their friends, and we're going to lobby you too. And you had better not take this document seriously. Otherwise, we're going to oppose you at the next election. That's the kind of thing politicians will listen to, even more than the Vatican.
So how can people contact the Sash movement?
Sure, our website's very simple. It's www.rainbowsash.com. Just rainbowsash.com, simple as that.
And they can get through to you there.
And all the details are there.
Michael Kelly, thank you very much.
Hi. With me I have guest Michael McAlpine. Hello, Michael.
Hi, Brett.
Michael, you are a numerologist, psychic and a clairvoyant.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. What is numerology for the people who are watching?
It's the study of numbers.
Mm-hmm.
What happens is that I grab their birth date and their name, and the name attributes back to their letters, of course, which come back to numbers again.
Right.
And come down with certain other numbers, put them together in a chart form.
Yeah.
The name is the soul, as far as I'm concerned, and the birthday is the physiology, the body, and both body and soul go on a journey, which is the birth date, which is the life path that the body and soul takes.
Right, okay.
And so out of that, I can look at different ways that people present themselves, their personality and their flaws, their pluses, and tell them how to conduct their life.
Okay. Now the skill, is it something that you were born with, or is it something you just pick up from a book, or?
Well, the numerology is learnt.
Yep.
You can learn it from a book or from teachers. I actually learnt from a psychologist.
Okay.
Well, that's not quite true. I did two different systems.
Yep.
One system I was dealing with is called the Chaldean, and then I wasn't quite happy with that, and then I learnt from a psychologist the Pythagorean method. So I've been learning that. I learnt that over 20 years ago and have been using that ever since.
Okay.
So
what are you needing for a reading? Just people's birth dates?
Well, what I need for a reading is people's birth dates and their full name. So it must be their birth name, birth certificate name.
Right, okay. How long do the readings generally take?
Well, if I'm doing a numerology reading,
Yep.
it takes about an hour.
Really? That involves?
If I'm doing a clairvoyant reading,
Yeah.
which is a combination of bits and pieces, and there's a little bit of numerology involved in that,
Yep.
and that could take about 40 minutes.
Okay.
So, but I can do quickies, you know. So, but I guess that if sometime in the future, if anyone sending in a letter or anything like that,
Yeah.
I could do that in about 5 minutes or so.
Yeah, that'd be
yeah.
great for future shows. Now, you've also been on radio, haven't you, and on TV?
Yes,
On 02AUG, I believe.
02AUG.
Yep, and you made a very famous prediction about Lady Di.
Yes, that was done in January 96.
Mhm.
I went down and I was interviewed, and I can't remember the radio station. It's down at the Mornington Peninsula.
Yep.
And I went through the normal routine of being interviewed, and she piped up and said, the interviewer said, "What's some of the world predictions you made?" And I went through the wall coming down in Berlin. That was one. And then I said, I've got some other ones to come up in the future, and one would be the royal family. It's not a young person who's going to die. It's not going to be an old person that's going to die, like the Queen Mother or the Queen or Prince Philip.
Yep.
It will be before the year 2000,
Right.
and it will be a young person.
Right.
She pressured me to go further, and I thought, oh, this is on air, I'm put on the spot. And so I said, all right, it is going to be Princess Diana.
Wow.
And I said, and she said, how will she die? And I said, she will die tragically.
Jeez.
Um,
How did you feel when that happened?
Well, I was only actually thinking on the way here, because I was just saying to a person
Yep.
who was I was having lunch with, and I said, almost 6 years ago, we were having lunch just up the road in Errol Street,
Yep.
and we were waiting for the news whether she's dead or not.
Yeah.
But I actually was about 10 o'clock that morning, and I was sitting playing Scrabble with a mate, and it flashed up on the TV, and I said, there's my prediction. And that was 10 o'clock that morning, that Sunday morning.
Oh,
And so then we went and had lunch in North Melbourne, and then from there, I knew it was going to happen at 10 o'clock that morning. That was it.
Oh, jeez. Look, you've got so many talents, you've clairvoyant, numerology. We'd love to get you back for another show sometime.
Yes, I'd love to come back.
If people want to contact you, they can contact, assume, the studio on benttv.com.au, and they just need to present their name and birth date.
Full name and birth date.
Yep, that's great. Thank you, Michael, for coming in.
Thank you.
See you sometime soon.
If I could have changed anything, I'd go back and I'd be born either male or female, not one wanting to be the other. You know, I really wouldn't care whether I was a man or a woman, just as long as I was happy.
And hello, welcome to a special Through the Lavender Lens this week. Special because we're into the second week and final week indeed of MIF, the Melbourne International Film Festival. And pleased to say there's quite a few films with a queer bent in it. Several you can see this week, one of which we're talking about tonight with the director of said film. It's called Becoming Julia. The director is Ruth Cullen, which is here with me right now.
Hi.
Ruth, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
Nice to have you with us.
I'm glad to be here.
That's jolly good. Now, you're a country girl from Victoria, ended up in Sydney via Canberra and Western Australia, 2 BAs under your belt, film editor, political activist. Well, film being the ultimate destination. How did you come to discover film and discover it was your passion?
When I was doing a degree in political theory, and I'd always been interested in sort of human rights type of things, racism in particular. And I went to see a film called Last Grave at Dimbaza, and I came away from that film. That was about people that were detained under apartheid, and I came away from that film knowing that what I knew now, I had to do something, you know, and that's what I was really attracted to in film, the power of film to be able to change people's lives. So that's how I originally got into film. I'd always written and done photography, and I saw film as being a marriage of those. But once I started making films, the rest all just dropped away.
Okay, yeah, it is certainly one of the most powerful ways to get your message across, isn't it? Yeah. So you've worked on over 40 productions? Yeah.
That's right.
How many as director?
Oh, probably about 10 as director. Now, a lot of those were sort of longer commissioned ones. Ones that I've done myself where I've developed an idea and raised the money and, you know, taken it through. There's been 3, 2 on Valley Myers, the artist Valley Myers, and 1 on Julia, the one that's on the Sydney Film Festival, and Melbourne.
And Melbourne.
Yeah.
Yeah, having seen it, it's a fantastic production. Had
Thanks.
you actually intended to go out and make a queer film or a transgender issued film from the word go, or did you actually meet Paul first off, and which was it, chicken or egg?
I'm not sure which one I am, but I basically cast the film. I put an advertisement in the transgender newsletter and basically started interviewing people. I very much wanted to follow a sex change because I wanted to break down gender codes and look at what makes a man and what makes a woman.
The way I feel now, I am a girl. If they could give me a pill or an injection that would make my mind in sync with my body, that would probably be easier and a hell of a lot cheaper than changing the body to fit the mind. I just want to make it run a little more efficiently so I can pretend I'm a greenie. Apart from that, what's wrong with a girl owning a hot V8?
I mean, Paul, as she was then, did he have any reservations whatsoever about the whole project?
Yeah, I mean, there's a big trust issue, obviously. What Paul said to me then was, well, what if there's something that I don't really like in the film? Will you take it out? And I said, I can't promise to take it out, but I'll whatever you say, I'll really listen to very seriously. That's what I can promise. And basically, if you don't want anything to be in there, then don't say it, because before you can raise any money, the person needs to sign a release form saying that you can use whatever they've said. And but as it turned out, I showed her the film at Fine Cut. She didn't see anything until then, and she loved it. And there weren't any areas that she wanted changed at all. So we're basically on the same path. She wanted to sort of show the normalcy, I suppose, of the transitional process, and I wanted to do the same. I wasn't out to make a sleazy kind of prurient film, and I liked her as a person, and over the shoot we became friends, so, you know, we're on the same path.
Yeah, it certainly is a very warm film, and unlike a lot of similar productions, she really does appear very down to earth, and she does indeed say, all I want to do is not be noticed.
That's right, fit in. Well, my whole thing was that if you like the person, if you're on their side at the beginning of the film, then, you know, that's sort of half the battle, because, you know, there were times when there were probably a lot of sort of more relevant issues, transgender type issues, but then it becomes a bit like a political pamphlet. You're getting it in your head, but you're not getting it in your heart. But whereas if you like someone, you're on their side. So it has that quality to it.
Did you come away with a much greater understanding of how we perceive gender as opposed to sex?
Sure. Well, the film, in a lot of ways, is a much more condensed version of what I went through over the 2-year period. I mean, I had a lot of tranny friends, but they were all the trannies that I knew were at the end of the journey. I hadn't seen any trannies through the transition process, but I think for me, what I realised was just how unconscious a lot of our own perceptions about gender are. You know, we're not really taught these things; we just absorb them, you know, through example.
And remember your body language.
Ford Resonance, that's the one I have the trouble with. The last 2 weeks, what have I been doing? I've been to Bathurst for 4 days, I think, 3 or 4 days. Been up there a lot lately, but yeah, it's good. Yes, I just bummed about up there, caught up with a few friends, out to dinner with a couple. What else did we do? Last 2 weeks, other than that, it's been pretty much work, and yeah.
What's coming up next for you?
I don't
What's
know.
on the horizon?
Don't know. I don't really want to do anything until I'm into it 100%. You know, I've worked on a lot of stuff, and I've just got to the point where I just want to work on things that I'm really into. So I've only just finished this film, so a lot of my effort is going into marketing this, and I'm just waiting for the next light bulb to light up, basically. But it'll happen soon. By the end of September, I should know.
Fantastic. Well, it's on at Acme Federation Square. The first showing is on the 7th of August, this coming Thursday at 5:15 p.m. You can ring them on 8663 2200 for information. Second screening's on Saturday the 9th of August at Greater Union, 131 Russell Street. You can contact them on 9654 8133. Hope a lot of you will get along and see it. It's well worth it. Very timely at the moment with the transgender issues in the police force here in Victoria.
Absolutely.
With big furore.
Absolutely. Well, I'm about breaking down prejudice, I think, and I think you do that through getting to know the person. You know, so I think it's particularly relevant at this time. But I mean, really what the film's about is living your own life honestly and bravely and courageously, you know, and that gives it a sort of a universal relevance as well. Yeah. Because there's a lot of people, wherever you're coming from, you know, that applies to.
I thank you heartily for joining us on Q Weekly.
Thanks.
And look forward to seeing the film. Get along Thursday and Saturday this week, Acme and Greater Union. And hope we'll see you back very soon.
Thank you very much.
No worries.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I lived under a rock and lived a lie and hid and did everything I could for 36 years. Now it's up front, this is me. I hope you like it, but if you don't, well, okay, I can get on with life anyway.
Just before we go, I'd like to remind everyone down at DT's this month, August 13th, there's a drag cocktail party. Now this is for first timers, so if you've never popped on a frock before, now's the time to do it. August 13th, prizes given away by the crew of Priscilla, the stage show. And again on August 23rd, the famous Bake Off hosted by Lindsay. All proceeds going to charity, so don't forget to pop down August 23rd. That's all for Q Weekly this week. We'll be back next week. Don't forget to stay tuned to Bent TV.